muktzeh. So let's bring up the text. I'm going to try to cover some issues if we can. Hopefully finish the chapter today. Okay, so we're in chapter 89, and we're in law number 2. So we said last week. So last week we spoke about the idea of that one of the conditions are that if you left it over Bein Hashmashis, it means on Erev Shabbos, Friday afternoon, going into Shabbos, as it crosses over into Shabbos from Friday afternoon into Friday evening, which is Shabbos, once the stars come out, and it's bikavana. Your intention was to leave it there. It means you didn't forget it there. So then whatever the muktzeh is on, so that becomes a basis, a base for the muktzeh, and it takes on with it the laws of the muktzeh, and therefore, for instance, candelabras on a table. So then if the candelabras are left intentionally on the table, so then the table becomes a basis, a support to the davar aser, to the candles. And then you can't move the table just like you can't move the candles. Okay, the candlesticks. So let's see law number 2. Haya munach. Okay, so hold on. Haya munach sham b'achnasis Shabbos gam davar heter. Okay, now we're reaching the question of dual support, right? We just said that if a table here, and if a table is a base for something that muktzeh, or anything that's a base for something that muktzeh takes on the restrictions of the muktzeh. So what about if there's dual? It's holding two things. You have on it Shabbos, and the Shabbos comes in, gam devar heter, something permissible was there. V'nasa hakli, and then the let's say the keli, the vessel, whatever it is that's holding the something that's for muktzeh, it becomes a basis, it becomes a base. La davar ha'aser v'la davar ha'muter. It's not just a base exclusively to the forbidden, it's also a base to the permissible. So how does it? So who wins basically? What is more powerful? Is it the permissible, and then it becomes a support, a base of something permissible, and we disregard the fact that there's something prohibited on it, like a davar muktzeh, something that's muktzeh, and therefore it becomes a base for the permissible, and therefore it's not forbidden to be moved. It doesn't take on the laws of the prohibited of the muktzeh. So how do we decide what is it a base for? So there's a rule. And the rule is, and this is important to know, im hadavar ha'aser yoyser chashuv loy aser l'taltalei. Sorry, im hadavar muter yoyser chashuv loy, if the permissible is more important, loy, to him, to the person, muter l'taltalei, then it becomes a base for the permissible, because that's the primary. However, what about if the prohibited, the muktzeh article, is more important to this person? So then it becomes the primary, and therefore the base becomes a base to the prohibited, and we disregard the permissible, and then it remains asur l'taltal. You can't carry it on Shabbos. It means you can't move the base on Shabbos. So therefore, what's the point? Therefore, this is the famous loophole. If you want to leave your candlesticks on the table for Shabbos, because you would like the candlesticks to be on the table, which a lot of people like, and you want to be able to move the table if you need. So make sure to put the table, the chalas, which are also a mitzvah, on the table before the Shabbos comes in. Then the table becomes a basis, a base, both for the chalas and for the candles, and we would consider the chalas to be primary over the candles, and therefore the table becomes a support to the primary, which is the permissible, which is the chalas. So here he adds that both the tablecloth, we're going to see that there's a question if the tablecloth is also a support or not. It's not everyone agrees to this opinion. But let's see how the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch reads it, that both the mappa, the tablecloth, and the shulchan and the table become a basis, a base for the candles and for the chalas, for the neiros, for the chalais. V'yu mutar b'tilton, then you could carry it because we use the primary as the chalas. V'im lo yasu kain. What happens if you didn't do that? You didn't put the chalas on the table before ben hashmashes. Now, some people have this idea that's wrong, clearly from this law. There's nowhere that it says the chalas have to go on the table first. Some people feel that whenever it becomes a base first put the chalas on and then put the candlesticks on. He doesn't say that here. He just says as long as the chalas are on before the Shabbos comes in. But what happens v'im lo yasachein? You didn't do that. Then the tablecloth and the table will only become a base for the prohibited, which is the candlesticks. But then you can't carry the tablecloth through the table. But the Kitzur continues anyways. However, b'di'eved, if it's already been done, im yesh tzorich gadol, let's say there's a big need. For instance, he gives an example. The candlestick falls and you need to move it, so that's not positioned well. So then we could rely on those opinions. The Sfira lahu that they hold, there's the opinion that holds that even if your intention is that the candlesticks remain there for the entering of Shabbos, meaning to be there over Friday night, but you did not have intention for it to stay there for the whole Shabbos. We'll see in a second how. So then there's those who say that you have to have intention for it to be there the whole Shabbos. But if you don't have intention for it to be there the whole Shabbos, so then it doesn't become a support for the prohibited. And what is the reason? How would it be that the candlesticks wouldn't be there the whole Shabbos if they're muktzeh? Minig, there is a custom. Lahasir b'shachar says Hamanoris that we have the candlesticks removed in the morning, means after Shabbos morning. Aidei Eini Yehudi, that a non-Jew comes into the house, or a cleaner, what have you, that comes into the house and moves it. And so therefore that's the minig, he says. And if that's the minig, so you never had intention for it to stay the whole Shabbos. And in the case of b'di'eved, where it's important, and something happens, and you need to move the table, you need to get the candlesticks off, you want to be able to shake it off, so then you could rely on the opinions that hold that you didn't have intention for the candlesticks to be the whole Shabbos. But clearly, this leniency is only if talking about something that you planned on removing, but something that you planned on keeping for the whole Shabbos, that you won't have the basis for this leniency. Aaron, hold on a second. Let me just finish the last second. Z asks a question about, does it have to be specifically the chalas on the table, or can you put on a bencher or a siddur? You asked in chat. I've seen those who say about putting a chumash. It seems like that's a more leniency because the challah, then it's like the siddur and the bencher are kind of just like you're just putting something there. Where the chalas, that's its place. You plan on having the chalas on the table. Everyone has their chalas on the table on Shabbos. The question is if you put it there early enough before the Shabbos comes in. So it's not exactly the same thing. But let's see the footnotes. Maybe they'll address it. Now this is important. The parentheses that he writes. Well, the Shulchan Aruch shalatanya, meaning the Shulchan Aruch of the Rebbe, of the Alter Rebbe, of the Rav. Kasiv da mappa belav hachilay hava basis. The opinion of the Alter Rebbe is that at no point does the tablecloth become a base for the muktzeh. Okay, so Aaron, ask your question, then we're going to quickly see the inside of the Alter Rebbe, and then we'll do the footnotes. You had a question, Aaron? You're on mute.
Yeah. Okay. So my question is, okay, so talking about me, if we put two challahs on the table because we don't want the third one to get hard, so we leave it in the refrigerator, and then we say our blessings, eat one challah, put the second challah back in the fridge with the third one, and then we take it out for afternoon for lunch. It's not going to be on the table the whole time. So what's the point of the bread?
It doesn't have to be on the table time. It has to be on the table as the Shabbos comes in.
Okay, so now when the Shabbos comes in, can I take it off and put it in the on the hot plate so it gets toasty?
So that's a good question. It's a good question. At the time Shabbos came in, it was a support. If you place it properly, like at let's say wherever you keep your chals for the meal, like on the front of the table, the middle, like in a proper. Don't just throw it on the table, but place it properly as if you're setting the table, and then you're just removing it temporarily. That wouldn't be a problem.
We just to let you know, we have a like thing that we put the salt, the pepper, and the two challahs on every Shabbos at one end of the table. But sometimes we would like to have it warm, so we'll take it.
I understand that, but so some people have the custom. They'll switch the challahs. They'll have two. Let's say if they'll have some challahs there to go into the meal, and then they'll switch it for when the time to make the kiddush. But if you leave it on, you have to make sure you leave it on well into the dark, because you want to make sure that there's not even a doubt, according to any opinions, if it's night yet. Then once you're certain that it's past all the zmanim of night, then to move it temporarily just to get a little warm in the permissible way, as we discussed in earlier classes, that it should warm up a bit, that's okay.
Okay, because my wife and me, we make sure I put it on before I leave for sure.
Yeah, excellent. Yes, Rebecca.
Um, so like what's the status of like the candles being on the table? Like, are you supposed to put the candles on the table halachically, or is it like better to do it that way, or it's just in case you like to put the candles on the table, this is what you need to do?
See, the point is that there is the mitzvah of Shabbos candles is shalom bayis, and to bring light in the room and to bring light at the meal. So the concept is to have it either very close to the table or on the table. So it's part of, it's not like just somewhere there. It should be part of it has to influence the Friday night. That's the point. It's shalom bayis candles, right? So
Mm-hmm.
it has to bring shalom bayis, and shalom bayis means it has to bring light to the house. And so therefore the custom is to have it on the table. Now, a lot of people don't have it on the table for many reasons. We're careful not to have it on the table. We're scared the kids are going to touch it. So we have them near our table. But this,
Mm-hmm.
like, basically when you make kiddush, you should be able to see it.
Okay,
Okay.
thank
So
you.
you're welcome. So we have over here in line where we're in the actual Shulchan Aruch of the Alter Rebbe, where he quotes about the question of the tablecloth. So it says in Law 9, Ein heter nasa basas la yisra im kain. Okay, Rebecca's coming back on. Ein heter nasa basas la yisra ela im kain hanichoy love bekavana. You again, we said before, the base only becomes a base if it was placed there intentionally. Leiz tzarich for whatever reason. It means you have to have a reason. Bein letzarich isra atzmein, whether it's because you want, let's say, the candlesticks on the table, b'shvil shisashav lav b'toiv, k'goyin moy shalakar, bein letzarich davar acher hamuter, k'goyin even shal piachavis. It doesn't make a difference if the base is supporting for the thing itself, let's say where the money is, or for instance, those who put a stone, which would be muktzeh, on top of the chavis, on top of the barrel, for the sake of the barrel. It means it doesn't make a difference if the muktzeh is helping the permissible, if the permissible is helping the muktzeh. If you put it on casually, without any intention, for any need, that there's a reason why you want it there specifically. This is very important because where everyone focuses on the candlestick, one of the things that I actually myself had to change was placing money, wallets, phones in your clothing drawer, right? Because that's also buses. And then you have to ask yourself if the phone, what's more important to you? What's more valuable for you? Your shoes and socks? Well, I mean, your socks and shirts, or your phone? And today, it's not, that's obviously there's an obvious answer to that, right? So that's a problem, because you can't say that the support that your clothing is equal value to your clothing, to your wallet, or to your phone. Hold on now, let me just finish the law here. So, but sometimes he says, you don't have any tzorich. Some people have like you have a drawer that you just put things one on top of the next. Why do you place it one on top of the next? Because the drawer doesn't have enough room for everything to have its own spot. That doesn't make a support. And just putting something there, it's not meant to be there, just there because You have no place to put it, so therefore you stack it one top of the next. And there the Alter Rebbe says it becomes like you forgot it. It's not intentional because you don't need it specifically there. It's only on top of something else. Means the Alter Rebbe is saying if you put, let's say you have a whole bunch of things and you stock one top of the next. One of them is muktzeh. And the only reason you're doing it because you have no space. In theory, you would put it somewhere. You would put it on its own spot. We're not talking about a drawer because a drawer you're pulling the drawer, moving the drawer, but you're just putting it there. So then it's not that it wants to be there, and it's not there intentionally. In theory, you'd like to have it somewhere else. So therefore, you could pull out the permissible, and the prohibited drops out. It doesn't become a bus as a support because it's just there because you have nowhere else to put it. Therefore. This is the Alter Rebbe's sheet that he quotes in the Alter Rebbe's opinion that he's quoting in the Kitzur. The Alter Rebbe holds that because of that, you don't need the candlesticks on the tablecloth. You need the candlesticks on the table. It's not the same thing. And therefore, even though in between the table and the tablecloth, in between the table and the candlestick is a tablecloth, you could pull the tablecloth, even though the candlesticks were there and left there, because you didn't need it there. Although one could discuss that idea, right? Because part of the decoration is to have a nice tablecloth and the candlesticks on top. But is the intention specifically that the table, that means you want the candlesticks to be on the table at that height, to that space, but the table, if in theory there was a way that the candlesticks could be on the table without being on the tablecloth, that also works. And therefore he says, you could move the tablecloth even though the candlesticks are on it. Your intention is for the candlesticks to be on the table, not on the tablecloth. And therefore the tablecloth, like if you had books stocked, and on top of the books you put your phone, so you don't need your phone to be on the books. You need your phone to be on the table. So the books don't become a base. The table becomes a base. It's not the laws of Tuma over here, where you have the laws of there's a whole bunch of things and you have a person sits on top of one of the cushions, then everything becomes tummy. You have over not everything is a question how the laws of Tuma work. But over here we're talking about the muktzeh. You're right. You don't care if the phone is on the table or if the phone is on the books. It's only on the books because you have no space for on the table to put the phone. So then you could just pull out the book. It doesn't become a base for the phone. It's not meant to be there. Same thing he says is the tablecloth. And you're not placing the candlesticks on the tablecloth because there's no place to put the candlesticks so that there is no tablecloth. But not that you have intention. Meaning to say, the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch says that if a Gentile comes in the morning and takes off the candlesticks, now the candlesticks are no longer on the tablecloth. So did the tablecloth become a base for Davar Asher, then you can't you can't use the tablecloth. But if you're according to the Alter Rebbe, it never became a base. So to take the tablecloth off, change it, shake it, do whatever you want, it's never a problem l'chatchila according to the Alter Rebbe. Because the tablecloth is never a base, because you don't need the tablecloth there. You need the table there. And the only thing is that there's no way to put the candles on the tablecloth on the table without having them on top of the tablecloth first. So it's no different than having a phone on top of a book. Because you have no space for the candlesticks on the table without the tablecloth. The tablecloth covers the whole table. Or because you didn't think to, but you have no intention for it to be there. There is no prohibition. It's not chatchila. Again, so according to the Alter Rebbe, if you did not leave chalas on the table and you left the candlesticks on the table intentionally to be there on the table for Shabbos, even according to the Kitzur that says that the custom is to take off and then it's only b'diavad. But if someone comes to your house and takes off the candlesticks, and that was your intention, even or not in your intention, that doesn't make a difference. And now the tablecloth can be moved freely. You want to shake it off, you want to change it. According to the Alter Rebbe, you're allowed to do that. Yes, Aaron, you wanted to ask something.
Okay. Think about this for a second. You asked a simple question. Which is more valuable, the phone or your clothes? So I looked at it like this. Forget about money for a minute. On the weekday, your phone's very valuable. You could do business with it. You can go, you can call your friends and family with it. On Shabbos, I have no use for my phone. I can't even use it. So my
I
clothes have more value because I'm putting on clothes that are special for Shabbos.
Very good. It's a very that's a that you Aaron. That's a yeshivisha. It's a yeshivisha twist. It's called the yeshivisha a yeshiva head. I hear what you're saying, but I'm not sure that would fly. I mean, I hear what you're saying because at this moment the phone doesn't have no value to you. But I think the question is like if someone came to you even on Shabbos and said, "Listen, we got to throw something off the boat. It's either your underwear or the phone." You know what I mean? It's taking up weight. So if the boat is sinking, you have a choice. What are you going to throw off? So that's you have to ask. I think that's where it comes
Well,
down.
because then you're looking at because then
But
you're,
because that really applies at any moment.
no,
Any
but you're looking at the phone as that this is my lifesaver. I can call people in emergency.
I
You're
don't know. I don't know. I don't know. First of all, there's that, and second of all, there's the other thing is the value, the actual value. A phone today is $1,000. You
more
understand?
than that, at least mine
Yeah,
is.
I'm saying phones are very expensive. Your underwear costs, $30. I mean, seriously, I looked into it. It's not simple at all to put your phone or your wallet. The question is the wallet, if the money's in the wallet and then the wallet is separate than the phone. But it's not so simple to say, and especially you're placing it there for a reason. You're placing it there. Why do you put your phone and your wallet or any other muktzeh things in your underwear drawer, your clothing drawer? Because you want to keep it there. That's where you want to keep it for Shabbos. And you have no plan for it to move until after Shabbos.
Well, I never thought of it that way because
But that's
if
the way,
I,
that's why you put it there. You put it there to put it away.
no,
That's
but I'm saying is that I put my phone somewhere which is not closed. I have all kinds of things. Like I have a desk with two
So that's what he's saying.
doors.
So that's what the Alter Rebbe says. If it's a desk, we're gonna see all the laws. But I think that for instance, if you have a muktzeh thing in your fridge door, are you allowed to open and close your door? So the answer is you're allowed to because the door it has a functionality as a door versus being okay. Today the doors are multi-purpose. They're a door and a cupboard space, right? You have
But
space.
what's the item in your refrigerator that wouldn't be able to be touched besides the light bulb?
Again, we go back. Remember, raw meat. I don't know things that are not permissible for Shabbos.
Okay.
Let's go back to the law inside the Kitzur and do the footnotes. We're looking for footnote number 6. Okay, but if the prohibited object is more important or equally important, Corey, and then the Mishnah Berurah says, and this tackles a little bit of Aaron's question, there's a difference between more important or equally important. Because equally important, you can say we swing to the positive. But he says, no, even equally important, we go with the negative, and then it becomes a support to something prohibited, according to the Mishnah Berurah, according to the Chavetz Chaim. Okay, but therefore, the best is to place the chalas on the table before Shabbos. Okay, so here we address Z's question, or silverware and dishes. So says the Pri Megadim, since they are more important than the flames of the candle. Okay, so here are the questions like this. What is the muktzeh? Is the muktzeh the flame or the candlesticks? So that's really the question here. So he says, so the Pri Megadim says the davar aser is the flame. Like nothing wrong with a piece of silver. So therefore, or whatever they're made out of today, or silverware and dishes. So therefore, he says that since they're important, they are more important than the flames of the candles. However, the Aruch HaShulchan 279:1 requires that the permitted item be more important than even the candlesticks. Now, therefore, we say challah because challah is a davar kadosh, right? So it has kedusha and a mitzvah. Therefore, one could argue the same thing would apply to a chumash or a siddur bencher, which people sometimes believe to use that as well. Okay. Let's continue to 8. What are we talking about over here? And it's permissible to handle them. Okay. So he says that so that the tablecloth and the table become a base for both the candles and the chalas, and it'll be permissible to handle them. Okay, right? Because if it becomes a base for both the chalas and the candlesticks, the chalas, according to according to even the Orchadesh, would be more valuable than the candlesticks. And therefore, that would be because of the mitzvah Shabbat. It's a mitzvah, so therefore the table will be permissible to be used because it becomes a base to both. And let's say, according to Mishnah Berurah, the chalas are even more important than the candlesticks. For the purpose of using the table or the space occupied by the table, and provided you cannot first easily shake off the muktzeh, shake the muktzeh off the table. Means it's not just that you could just be casual. If you could easily get the muktzeh off, it's better to do that first. According to most opinions, the table may be moved even if the challah is no longer there, i.e., Aaron's question. Right? Does the chal have to remain there the whole time? So says the Shulchan Aruch 277.6, Mishnah Berurah 377.18. Some, however, permit this only where a loss may be involved, the minchas Shabbos. So not everyone is in agreement when I told Aaron that even according to the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch that says once the Bein Shmotz Shabbos comes in, again, you have to be careful not to just light the candles, put the chals on, light the candles, and quickly remove them. So Aaron, you have to make sure that your wife makes sure it's well into the night and try to cover all the opinions of when the night is before she removes the chalas, because if it's according to some opinions, it's not night yet, so then the chalas didn't cross over into Shabbos, and then the table would become asr. Again, it doesn't mean you can't eat on the table; it just means you can't move it at all. All right. Footnote number 9. What are we talking about here? You may rely on the poskim who rule that the base does not apply unless it is intended the muktzeh to remain there for the whole Shabbos day. See Shulchan Aruch 309 and Bir Halacha. Okay, so this is so far we have the case of the table and the candlesticks. We're going to get. I want to tackle the question of the drawer. I think that's something that happens all the time. Hayu mois bekis. What happens if you have money in your pocket on Shabbos? Hatofer bebigdoi. That's part of your clothing. I mean, the pocket that's in your clothing. Mutal taltas a beged she'eni kol a beged nasa basas alakis. It's not a problem because the only thing, this is another thing. The only thing that becomes the base is the pocket. The whole pants or shirt that has the money in it, that's not where you put the money in the pocket. It's not you put my money in my pants. So the pants, you're holding the pants. So what is the base? The base is the pocket, not the pants. That's the thinking. And the pocket is only secondary, it's bottled, it's nullified to the garment. So the garment is the primary. The money is only the base is only the pocket, and therefore the pocket doesn't take over the dominance of the garment. And therefore the garment has nothing to do with the money. The garment tells the pocket, you and the money have your own relationship. It has nothing to do with me. Right? But be careful not to put on the garment even in your own house. It's not a question of carrying outside. Because then we're scared you may go outside and then you're carrying something outside. What happens if you're walking, which happens sometimes, you're walking in the street, in the public domain, and you find that there's money in your pocket? That's not discussed in this chapter. We will we'll see, we have to see before in chapter 68. But, however, if a table drawer contains money, right? This is the question of the drawer. Megera or Shuvlad, this is different names for the drawer. V'yesh mois b'teva, and there's money in the drawer. Osir l'taltal tzashulchan. Then we don't say, like the pocket, that the drawer is nullified to the garment. Mishum da'ateva hu kli b'fnei atzmi v'einu b'teva gal shulchan. The drawer is not nullified to the table. So then the thing is again, here's the same question. Let's say Aaron, who says he has a desk, and in the desk he places intentionally his money to be there over the Shabbos, and in a drawer. You can't just pick up the desk and move it on Shabbos because the drawer is not nullified to the table, and the drawer becomes a base for the money. Like I said, this is the idea of the drawer and the money is a problem, and the only time will be permissible if the drawer has in it permissible more valuable. And the same thing applies to iPhones or computers or other expensive items. And Aaron's yeshivish idea of saying that on Shabbos it means nothing to him, yet one has to examine that shaila, if that's accurate or not. If that's an accurate way of placing value. right? Because even we saw that the Pri Megadim says, when he talks about the flame versus the candlestick and the dishes versus the candlestick, that dishes, like for instance, it's not a question of what's important to you now, but what would you drop first? If someone says you have, give me your candlesticks or your plates. So that's the question, hand over your plates or your candlesticks. If you're going to hand over the plates first, so then the candlesticks are more important. Okay. If you had money in your pocket, let's see footnote number 10. Okay, see chapter 88, 13. Okay. He says in 11, if it is preferable to first shake the money out, even if you're holding the garment, even to hold the garment. You're saying the garment is primary and the pocket doesn't become the primary, even though it's carrying intentionally the money, but the only base is the pocket. This all has to be really examined, how pocket, the whole idea of the pockets, because if you see the actual wording over here, Hayamais bekisa tofer bebigdoi. The question is, what does it mean, kisa tofer bebigdoi? Is it a today pockets are not it's not like you sew a pocket onto the clothing. Part of the pants is that there's a pocket inside the clothing. Although technically, most pants today, have a it's kind of like a material separate that's sewed onto the pants. That's the pocket, but a pocket shirt, I guess maybe the same. Pocket shirt, like a breast pocket, is really part of the garment. But let's not get petty about this. But he seems to say so. But he says either way, better to shake it out. Footnote number 12. It's a source. Okay, so here we're talking about the question of the drawer. So he says in footnote number 13, this is true only if the drawer can be completely removed from the table. Otherwise, the drawer is considered only as a subordinate to part of the table. Okay. So he does. That's my point. He doesn't say that about the pocket. He's saying if you plenty of drawers could be pulled out of the table, right? And so then if the drawers could be pulled out of the table, out of the desk, so it's its own. It's not connected. Now, obviously, today's guards that we have on the drawers doesn't make it part of the table. Meaning the fact that you have a rolling metal that has a little back, you have those little clips that if you open the clips and you can pull the drawer out, that's just preventing that when you open the drawer, you don't pull the drawer out on your feet. But the drawer is its own thing. So he's saying, I'm assuming that. I don't know that, but I'm assuming that. But if we're saying that he says if the drawer can be pulled out, then the drawer is its own separate thing, and you can't move the table. However, and it's not secondary to the table. But if the drawer cannot be removed from the table, then he says it's subordinate, it's a secondary to the table. Hold on, Aaron. Let's see footnote number 14. Now, about the money in the drawer. What happens if you have other things in the drawer? Provided the drawer is used exclusively for the muktzeh item, not just the money, whatever the muktzeh item is. If the drawer, let's let Danny in. If the drawer normally holds other objects, then only the drawer is if the drawer if the drawer normally holds other objects, then only the drawer is the base for that Shabbos, and the table may be moved. The Mishnah Berurah says that even if you have basically on Shabbos only the phone or the money, the muktzeh in the drawer, but the drawer is usually used for anything or most things, then only the drawer is a problem, but the table is not. But again, this is again, but if you have something permissible in the drawer that's of equal or more value, according we learned the opinion of Mishnah Berurah has to be more value. So then the drawer is not a bus, it's the davar aser. But again, the question is putting a valuable that's a question of the table being moved. But I'm talking about literally, if you walk into your drawer and you want to open your underwear drawer, your clothing drawer, and open it on Shabbos to take out some clothing, even if the phone is not lying on the clothing. But if the muktzeh item is the primary, most valuable thing, it's not simple that you could open the drawer. It's not only not simple, it's probably not allowed. Yes, Aaron.
Okay, in my mother-in-law's house, It's not such a big apartment. So the table's on the side. So when she invites the family over, she'll have dinner without us. And then on that lunch, we have to move the table. And you can extend the table by opening it up. I think there might be a drawer or whatever, but there's an extra piece. So my question is, can you make the table bigger and can you move it? Because we need to move it, otherwise the whole family's not going to fit.
A table's not a problem to move. The problem is if there was muktzeh on the table.
So the
Intentionally
candlesticks,
to be there for the whole Shabbos.
but the candlesticks are on there for the whole Shabbos, but they burnt out because now it's afternoon.
I mean, that doesn't make a difference. That's not if the candlesticks become as the fire is there on Shabbos, the candlesticks become a davar muktzeh. That's not then you have a problem unless you want to rely on the fact that you would have them taken. If you have the intention to be there the whole Shabbos and there's no one coming on Friday morning, Shabbos morning to take it off, then you have a problem. Yeah, and you didn't leave the challah on before. Again, you have all the methods you could do. Leave the challahs on the dish, the tablecloth, the dish, the dishes or the silverware. But if you've done none of that, and you just had candlesticks at Bein Hashmashas, so according to the Alter Rebbe, you can move the tablecloth, but you can't move the table.
Okay, now my question is, are you allowed to build a table to make it bigger by putting in a leaf?
That's another question on Shabbos. That's not what we're discussing now. We'll get to that. About putting in leaves on Shabbos. That's a good question, but we'll get there when we get there.
Okay, but the main thing is, if you put the challahs and you left them there and you left the candles on, then you could move the table.
Yes, we said that. According to the Alter Rebbe, the challahs don't have to be on there for the whole Shabbos.
Okay, I got you.
Okay. Okay, we're gonna actually. I have some. If you see, we have a whole bunch of things open over here because I wanted to bring in some various laws about the question of the buses. Again, this is a big deal. It happens all the time on Shabbos. But let's first finish the text, and if we have time, I'll go through some of the other the off Kitzur stuff. Okay, this we said. It only becomes a base of something that's prohibited if it was there at twilight, crossing over from Friday into Shabbos. If it only went onto the table afterwards, after the Bein Hashmashos, means after Friday, after it went into Shabbos already. However it got there, it's not important. It does not become a base. Then you could even carry the table while the muktzeh, while the prohibited things on it. So therefore, what would be the case? There are things that become muktzeh on Shabbos. Shells, bones. So even though they're on the table, you're allowed to shake off the tablecloth because the tablecloth doesn't become a basis, doesn't become a base. If I'm assuming in this case, the Alter Rebbe would agree that the tablecloth is the place you want to place the bones and the shells, as opposed to the table. But let's just say either way, it's not a problem because they weren't there when we entered the Shabbos. That's only the case where there wasn't something else there before, for instance, the candlesticks. As I said before in paragraph number 2. All right, let's see. So let's see inside. Anyone who learns the Alter Rebbe, who was very strict about eating nuts on Shabbos because of the shells, that's something obviously different. Okay, let's see footnote number 15. You can be handled even while the muktzeh object is on it. The Magen Avram 308:50 is that opinion. However, the Taz and the Yeshuas Yaakov rule that while the muktzeh is on the vessel, it is a base until removed. That although it doesn't retain the status of a base 24 hours, 26 hours, but while it's a base, it's a base. I mean, this is this agreement between the Magen Avram and the Taz. The Magen of these, again, we learned about who the Taz was in one of our Halacha story classes, the great Taz, from Lemberg. But we have the Magen Avram, and the Kitzur takes on the opinion of the Magen Avram over the Taz, that even if the muktzeh is on the table or what have you, it doesn't become a base if it wasn't there on entering into Shabbos. However, the Taz disagrees and says it is a base while it's there. It's just not a base if it falls off. It is therefore preferable to shake the muktzeh off if practical. So because we have the ruling of the Magen Avram that you don't have to, but there is the opinion of the Taz. It says that while it's there, it is a base. So just to just disregard it's better first to get it off the table if possible in a practical way. Obviously, you don't want to break something or make something or make everything dirty. But if it's in a way that's okay and it was placed there on Shabbos, then it's still preferable to be able to be careful for the opinion of the Taz. Okay.
So how do
Veloy,
you eat? How do you eat chicken?
what do you mean?
There's bones in the chicken because most Ashkenaz Jews eat a chicken with a bone in it.
Okay, the bone question is a good question. I think we discussed it in one of our muktzeh classes that while it's until you could take it off the table and move it into the garbage. That's because it's davar moist. It can't. You don't want to keep it on the table. It's disgusting. It's like a dirty diaper. Okay, v'loi nasa basis eli meniche bekavana. Another thing, he's going back over the rules we mentioned in Sif number 2. It doesn't become a base unless you intentionally left it there. Sheyeh munach sham ben hashmashes, and your intention was for it to be there as Shabbos comes in. Avlim nisha sham machmas shicha, but if you forgot it, ishnafel me'atzma, or it fell there, loi nasas basis, it doesn't become a base. Again, these are points that we've discussed before, but he's telling them to us specifically. 16, he says, again, see paragraph, what do you say? See paragraph 2, again, this is what was discussed before. And he says, if you placed it there without thought, Mishnah Brura cites conflicting opinions. So, okay, so there's different. The Mishnah Brura brings other opinions. The Kitzur says it's not a problem. Okay. V'lein ase bosses ella kli shaloi. Okay. Now, this is another question that comes in many scenarios of halacha. Can you decide on someone else's things? For instance, let's just say that if you put a phone into a drawer, on Shabbos makes the drawer in a way that you can't move it, right? You go into someone else's house or you're a roommate with someone and put your phone in someone else's drawer, the person's going to be like, "It's my drawer. Why did you put your phone in my drawer?" You can't make someone else's things a base for your things. Therefore, he says, "V'loinasa basis ela kli shalai." You can only turn your base. You can only make your base into a base of prohibited. If you put something muktzeh on someone else's things, you can't decide to make someone else's things a base for the prohibited. This may seem like an obvious or insignificant rule. It's not obvious and it's not insignificant. And not only that, it could make a question about a lot of things. For instance, in a public hotel or public space, if you put your candlesticks there, it's not your table. Hold on, Aaron. This is an opinion in general. You can't make something prohibited that's not yours. It's not yours to make prohibited. Without his consent. Okay, the question is without his consent would obviously be, a hotel. If they tell you to put it there, then it's with consent. Okay, what, Aaron? You had a question.
Yeah, does this apply to married couples?
Right? What's yours is mine. What's mine is yours.
Yeah.
Okay, so then what's yours is mine. Is mine is yours.
Okay, but what if she has her own, like her
So,
drawers and her things?
I would say, all jokes aside, I would say that if you don't typically put your things in her space, and she doesn't want you to put, especially if she doesn't want you to put your things in your space, and you decide to put your phone in her drawer, then I think that would be like a case where there's two separate things. But that's obviously something you have to work out separately.
So there's no hard fast law about couples share the space.
Well, you could argue that. I'm talking just off my own without getting deep into that. But even couples have their privacy and right if your wife, I guess the tell would be if the wife or the husband or each other, or even the same thing would apply to roommates, if it's normal for you guys to share space, even if it's their space, but you to share space and they don't mind, then it's okay. But they then it's as if you got consent. But if it's not okay and it would be annoying to why are you putting your things in my drawer kind of thing, then that would be like making someone else's item a base which you don't have the permission to do. If your wife or your husband doesn't want your phone in their drawer, then you can't just play. Then by placing it there doesn't make it us. I would assume. Make sense to you?
Yeah.
All right. And same thing would apply to, I mean, to siblings, sisters who share a room, we're not just talking about husbands and wives. You have sisters who share bedrooms, you have brothers who share bedrooms, you have roommates who share space. People that share space, right? I remember there was a technology someone was telling me about that. You have roommates that share space, right? In an apartment. So you have, how do you divide the bills? So if someone showers for 10 minutes and someone showers for 1 minute. So, the person who showers for 10 minutes is using, 10 times the amount of water. Someone uses electricity for blow dryer, the other person doesn't. Like, there's a lot of things where shared apartments it's expected that no one's monitoring. But someone started to develop technology where they do monitor, where basically nothing works unless you put a card to it. The water won't go on, the electricity won't go on, and then it just monitors each person's use privately, and then you pay your own bills, which is whatever. I don't go to that
I
how that deals with obviously straw. But I'm just saying is then the same thing applies. So if you have different depending on the relationship of the partnership or of the roommates of how you share space, would it be if you could make someone else's space a base or not? Yes, sir.
my son was roommates when he was in Yeshiva University in an apartment, and they just said be a mensch. Like when they cook meals, someone's cooking, and if someone paid a little more for the food and they weren't cooking it, so you figured, so you paid a little bit more or you bought something extra, and the other guy put his effort into it. Just be a mensch. I mean, it's like these
Okay.
rules. You have
Okay.
these rules which state this is what the rule actually is, but if you really want to do it right, you better just do it this way.
Oh yeah, I mean the healthy normal way is could be considerate and kind of and be kind of joint effort. But today there's a lot of people that want their mamish down to the penny. It depends on the relationship. All right. All right. He says if you're placing the muktzeh there, okay. Now he said this: if you're placing the muktzeh there is of benefit to the other person, the vessel becomes a base according to the Magen Avram. It means even without the person's permission, if it helps that person, the person can't say, "Well, I didn't ask you to do it because I did it for you." For instance, putting your roommate's phone in their drawer, and he says, "Why did you put it in my drawer?" It's not, I didn't, what do you mean I put it there? Because that's where you keep it safe. So I put it there. You forgot, So that's obvious. I'm just giving an example, but that would be kind of an example. I just want to quickly, we have a few minutes. I want to go into something. I don't know what this website is, but it seems to tackle the laws over here of the basis l'davar aser. It says like this. If muktzeh was placed on top of a non-muktzeh item with intention that it stayed there of all of the Shabbos, like we learned, then the permitted item becomes muktzeh, it becomes a base, as it serves as a base, a basis for the forbidden object. For example, if one places money on a table, then even though the table is not itself muktzeh, since he placed it or she placed the muktzeh money on it, the table becomes muktzeh because now it's a basis, the davar aser, it's a base. In other words, the decision to place the money on the table implies consent not to use the table on Shabbos. That's how we translate a bus as a davar aser, a base. Making the table muktzah just like the money on it. Even if the money were to fall off during the Shabbos, it stays a basis. It will not matter since the table was muktzah during the Bein Hashmashas, the twilight. It remains muktzah all of Shabbos. That's basically a nutshell of what we learned in this chapter. In contrast, if one did not intend for the money to stay on the table over Shabbos, but simply left it there by mistake, then the table does not become muktzah since he has not decided to make it a basis, a base for something muktzah. Nevertheless, lechatchila, one should still not move the table while the muktzah item is on it. Okay, it doesn't say the basis for this statement that if it was left there, then lechatchila you can't, because we didn't learn that. Let's move on. Rather, he should tilt. Oh, so if it's still there. So we learned that there's those who say that you should, according to the Taz, that you should tilt it, the table, so that the money falls off, and then move the table wherever one wants. However, if the muktzah item were to be damaged, if you slide off like a phone or something, the following on the floor, then one may move the table along with the muktzeh because it doesn't come a base item in place where the ladder can safely be slid off without being damaged. All right. For example, if the muktzeh item is a smartphone, which would likely break if dropped, one may move the table elsewhere. Similarly to the muktzeh item is a stone, and next to the table are fragile glass, whatever. Then okay, that's all obvious stuff. The same applies to a laptop left on top of a book. Okay, why? This is the idea that the Alter Rebbe brings down. Valuable candlesticks left on a tray. Valuable knives left in a case. Raw potatoes left in a drawer. This is the question of what you asked about what could be muktzeh in a fridge. A raw potato is not edible, right? Or a tzedakah box left on the bima. If these items were intentionally placed there, then whatever they are resting upon becomes a basis of davar aser and is muktzeh. If they were forgotten there, the base does not become muktzeh. Okay, just the idea of the laptop on the table on the book, that we clearly said it's not the case if you're stacking. It means if you've placed it there for that's its place, then the book becomes muktzeh. But if you put the laptop there because you have nowhere else to put the laptop, and it's just that you have no space to put it, so you just put it on top of the book, that's not the same thing. Sometimes during the week, one wishes to place something muktzeh in a closet, but because there's no space, he puts it on top of clothing in the closet, right? So we just said now. There is a disagreement whether such placement renders the clothing muktzeh. Some say that since ultimately the muktzeh was consciously placed on top of the clothing become a basis, which is what the Taz says. Others maintain that since the person did not intend for the muktzeh to be there specifically, but simply ended up there because there's no other space, the item of the clothing does not become a basis, which is what we said, the Magen Avram, which is what the Alter Rebbe says in general. The Alter Rebbe usually goes with the opinion of the Magen Avram. In practice, when necessary, one may be lenient according to the Mishnah. So says the Mishnah Berurah. Okay, so the point is, again, in the drawer, here you have to remember something else. There's a difference between a shelf and a drawer. A shelf, you don't move the shelf. If you have a shelf and you're looking for somewhere to put your phone and you place it on top of your shirts just because you have nowhere else to put it, then you have the Magen Avram, which the Alter Rebbe paskins like. That's why the tablecloth is permissible. You could just pull the shirt out. Why? Because you had nowhere to, you didn't want to put it on top of the shirt. You had no cupboard space. But a cupboard is not a drawer because a cupboard doesn't get moved. Here's a question: if you're moving the clothing, but if the whole drawer becomes a base, it's another question. Yes.
What about a shelf that you can pull out because it's not a drawer because there's no walls or?
No, if you're not moving it. The question is you're allowed to use the table. You're not allowed to use the shelf. The question is if you have a shelf.
No, but the shelf can pull out. Sometimes you have shelves.
It doesn't make a difference if it could pull out, but you're not pulling it out now.
Okay.
The question is if you're allowed to pull it out, not if you can pull it out. So okay, then you're moving the drawer, right? I guess. Let's see what he says. I don't believe the rails on the drawer is considered that it's in space. It's in place. If one finds money and other muktzeh items in his pocket, okay, this we read about. He may assume that they were forgotten there, so his clothes does not become a basis. However, in order not to continue to carry around muktzeh in his pocket, he should try to shake it out. If he is embarrassed to do so in public, whatever that means, or if he is worried that the muktzeh item will get lost, he may continue to wear the item of clothing until he reaches a place where he can shake it out. Okay, here he doesn't say exactly what we said. The halacha doesn't say the reason is because he forgot it. Because the halacha is because the pocket is not the primary. That's what he says in the Shulchan Aruch. So what he says over here is not what we read in the text. Okay. I don't know who this is. I'm not saying I have anything against this person. I'm just saying comparable to what we said in the text. Let's just see if we could see this question over here. If an assortment of items have been placed on a tray of table, some muktzeh and some not. The muktzeh status of the tray depends upon which item is considered to be more important, right? This is what we said about the permissible and the prohibited on one space. If the muktzeh items is more important, then the tray becomes a basis. A basis means a base for the muktzeh. If the non-muktzeh item is more important, then the tray does not become a basis, a base, and is not muktzeh. For example, let's say for Shabbos, the Shabbos candles and the challahs are on the table. If the candlesticks are made of clay, the challahs are more important. And the table may be moved. However, if the candlesticks are silver, which makes them muktzeh, machmas, chasar, and kis, they are more important than the chalas. The table becomes a basis and may be moved. All right, this is not an opinion of everyone, and it definitely doesn't say what we learned about the candlesticks having to have valuable based on the silver value versus the mitzvah value. All right. Aaron, for your question, if your wife lights candlesticks that are monetarily more valuable than the challahs, right? Challahs cost a few dollars, candlesticks cost more. So we're not stringent on that to say that we have to see if the challahs are worth as much as the candlesticks. The halacha we go according to is that the challahs make the table permissible to move. And he's being strict on this, although he says that he put in footnote number 5 in a quick glance, there's obviously what to be lenient because, of course, there's a question if the flame is muktzeh or the candlesticks. Okay. Because in the footnote that we have in the Kitzur, it mentions silverware and dishes versus candlesticks, not challah. Challah is a mitzvah, you have to remember. If one left muktzeh items on top of something belonging to his friend, right? He has not rendered it a basis. As a general rule, one cannot render someone else's possessions forbidden without permission. However, if he acted at his friend's behest or knows that his friend wished to be done, then he had rendered it a basis. Okay, and that's obviously up for interpretation what that means. Even when the basis is much more expensive than the muktzeh item placed upon it, it still takes on its muktzeh status since it serves as a base. However, when the muktzeh item is of no importance compared to the basis on which it's placed, the basis means the base does not become muktzeh. Therefore, if one left a small change on a table or bones on a plate, this is your question about bones on a plate, Aaron. Since the muktzeh item is negligible vis-a-vis the table or plate, they do not become a basis. Similarly, if the main function of the buses of the base of the buses is not to be a buses. For example, if the door of a closet or refrigerator is attached to drawers that contain muktzeh objects, since the main function of the door is to open and close, to open the closet or refrigerator, and not as a buses for the drawer, then the door does not become a buses a base. All right. A table that has become a buses may not be moved, but it may be used for eating and studying, even if you left the candlesticks on Shabbos. Yes, Barbara.
I have a question about the base. Now, I'm getting my kitchen remodeled, and what I've done is I now have this drawer that pulls out, and I have 2 trash cans in there, one for my garbage and one for my recycle. Now, can I open that on Shabbat? Is that a base for the trash cans?
No, well, the trash cans is nothing. There's nothing muktzeh. The only thing is the mios, and that was there placed intentionally because you don't unless that you want to. That's how you dispose, and you have to dispose on Shabbos. That's not. But if you had in there for something like that you kept your mixer, that's something else. But a garbage that's not a problem to open and close the garbage.
Okay, thank you.
Let me ask you to be a little ridiculous here, but okay. So you said what is worth more? So you have a solid bar of gold, and you have your tefillin. The solid bar of gold is definitely worth more than the price of the tefillin, but the solid bar of gold is not getting you to heaven, but the tefillin is. So which is more valuable?
Okay, another excellent question, Aaron. That's a good question. Based on what he was saying in this thing that we just learned before, you could argue that we go after the monetary value, but I don't think that's what we were discussing until now. I think that the monetary value only comes vis-a-vis when money is the only issue at hand, like silverware versus candlesticks. When talking about mitzvahs and and davar shebekdusha, it's hard to put a monetary value on davar shebekdusha because one person's bar of gold is another person's spiritual bar of gold. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, Yasher Koach. I'm happy we finished the chapter. I'm not saying that we got everything figured out, but I think we have enough to go by. Laila Tov, good Shabbos, and see you all for next class.